Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. My name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Madmouth. Pleased to be joined by Eric Katz.
Hello. Thank you for having me, Scott.
And favorite of the show is K.R. Lombardia, the legendary coach over at Tampa Chamberlain High School. And we worked together back in the good old days, right, K.R.?
Yes, sir. It was a long time ago.
It was, but you know what? We're like wine. The older we get, the better we are. Well, there are a few old geezers on his show. That's why I mentioned it in the first place.
Don't call me an old geezer.
Well, that's all right. I feel like I'm older than you are. I'll let my medical bills.
Eric's the only young one in this group.
Yeah, he really is.
28.
Yeah, we're the only three that could go to Morrison's cafeteria. I don't know if they're still in business.
Well, get a senior discount, right?
Right. And George Icorn working the secking half of our double night. Only K.R. Lombardi and I would know what Morrison's cafeteria is, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't a bad place.
And Piccadilly.
If you eat there in St. Petersburg and you have brown hair, then you definitely feel that you have to respect your elders because there are a whole lot more of them there than anywhere else. All right. Anyways, let's get to the topics at hand. The New York Yankees in last place this time of the year is unheard of, right, Eric Katz?
Correct.
Anything you want to add to it?
I mean, it's just unfortunately with the injuries that they've had, they haven't really had a full team yet. I think it also falls on briancashman for not addressing the offense, which we saw in the first half last year got off to just an incredible start, and in the second half it kind of tallied off, which I think that's something he failed to recognize because you can only blame so much on injuries.
Care?
Exactly. I was at coffee last Friday with Joe Malloy, who many of y'all may know that was George Steinbrenner's son-in-law, and he was actually the general manager of the Yankees at one time. And we were talking about it, and I just the old man would have gotten rid of Cashman and Boone a couple of years ago because he didn't tolerate losing. And I just don't think that they're not the same organization they were many years ago, where their minor league system was probably number one in pro ball. And I just don't want to hear about all these excuses about injuries, because they would have injuries years ago, and the second guys would step up, and their second guys aren't stepping up. And I think some of the players they've got just are not doing the job. Donaldson, he's older, and I don't know. I think just losing Judge shouldn't kill them,
right?
But it is. It seems like it is.
George?
Yeah, they're 9 games behind Baltimore in the division, and they're 2.5 games behind the last wild card spot. So they're in the thick of things as far as the wild card goes. There's no question about that. They can still, but what is that? We all know what that is. It's a 1-game reprieve. I mean, there's only one game, and you got to win it, obviously, in the wild card round.
Right.
But I agree with you, KR. They just don't seem to be the same as they used to be. The Yankees, and like you said, the depth that they had coming up from the minors or on the bench. And, I agree with you. I mean, Boone should have been let go earlier this year or last year, whatever. I mean, he did not deserve to come back this year, I don't think, and he is back, but they're still very hesitant to pull the trigger on he. I really think that there will be some spark left in them. I mean, when Judge comes back, if he comes back healthy, of course, and that's a big if. But I also think that, like you said, there's something that's the mystique and the aura of the Yankees of old seems to be gone right now.
Yeah, Aaron Boone would have definitely been gone under George Steinbrenner. Aaron Judge, well, he had a great year, signed a big contract. But I'm going to throw this out there anyways. Should Boone get the axe, I would love to see Don Mattingly as the manager. Period.
I mean, the deal with Boone is this. I mean, obviously Hal is not the old man. Hal, which I get on Hal's end, continuity is everything. But George let go of Joe Torre, or had Joe Torre walk out, however that worked. He didn't bring him back, despite winning him four World Series rings, which in recent years that was the most recent Yankee dynasty. But the fact of the matter is, George wanted to win. Didn't matter who you are. Didn't matter how long you were with the organization. If you weren't getting it done, you were fired. Sometimes you were fired after just 1 week. See Yogi Berra.
Yeah.
Well, George George did not know baseball. Again, something Joe and I were talking about the other day. George was a football guy, and football. You talk about undefeated seasons in college, and George was a college football guy. He thought you could do that in baseball, and you couldn't. Well, I think the 1889 Cincinnati Reds went undefeated. That doesn't happen in modern day baseball. But I think George thought you could win every game, and he was willing to spend the money to get the players. And I think, and Joe told me this the other day, Hal is not a big competitor like the old man was, and that takes them out of the equation. I think he's making money. Yeah, of course he's making money in New York, but is he winning? I don't think he cares about winning. And if you don't care about winning, then you're not going to go out and win, and you're not going to get players that can win.
Here's what happened.
I still think the minor league system is the way to build your program. I think the Rays do it probably better than anybody, considering the money that they have.
Well, we're going to segue to that in a moment. I just want to have one. The only last word I'll say is I remember years ago when Georgesteinbrenner fired Dickhouser after 1 year. Yep. We all saw how that worked out. That Hauser ended up winning a championship with the Kansas City Royals, and it's unfortunate that cancer got to him at an early age. So Dick Hauser's a guy. I believe he had 103 wins and 59 losses. Just unbelievable. So,
Scott, I'll tell you this. I was in Tallahassee as assistant coach at Hillsborough Community College when Dick Hauser was hired with the Yankees. I was coaching third base, actually, and I asked Mike Martin, I said, "Where's Dick?" He goes, "In New York. He's going to get hired." And I remember telling him, I said, "God, I hope you get the job." And 2 days later, they hired Dick Hauser, and then Mike Martin got the job at Florida State. So
wow, that's unbelievable.
Yeah, I remember Hauser was in the mix for Florida State.
Yeah,
Hauser deserved better fate than that from George.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
All right, so now we're going to segue to what AKR was saying. What happened to the Tampa Bay Rays? Although they did beat the Marlins tonight 4-1, the Marlins in their own right are sliding, and they're sliding fast. But you know what? We'll go ahead and right to left. Eric, the Tampa Bay Rays.
Well, I've been saying it.
13-0.
I've been saying it forever. They were losing pitchers left and right. They lost a couple starters during the season. They got another one who's been out since June. And, they don't have the pitching depth that they normally have. Yeah, Todd Bradley is going through his rookie woes, which I think he can be knowing that program, I think he's going to make a fine pitcher in Major League Baseball, but they don't have the depth behind them that they normally do have. And also their bullpen is an absolute shambles right now. So between the lost pitchers and also a bullpen that was very shaky going into it, that team was bound to have problems. And now with bats going on the injured list, and with how hot the Baltimore Orioles have been as of late, it was bound to happen. But nobody wanted to believe me, saying, I'm like, hey, they don't have the bullpen to compete. They may have gotten off to that hot start during the year. Whether say what you will about who they played, they all played Major League Baseball too. They were going to be in trouble once their pitchers started going on the IL. I'm like, just wait, Baltimore or somebody else is going to catch them, and that's exactly what happened.
Well, I've always thought that Kevin Cash was a good manager, but there's only so much a guy like him can deal with.
Right.
Go ahead, here.
No, I think the same thing. Their pitching has a lot of injuries, and they swing the bat pretty well early in the year. But I think once you go through their lineup, you realize maybe there's some weaknesses there, and they're pitching to their weaknesses. So, yeah, I still think they're a pretty good club. I mean, but Baltimore has, in the last 3 years, has improved themselves so much. If you all remember 3 years ago, they were terrible. I mean, they were horrible. And all of a sudden, those guys have matured and stepped up, and they've gotten pretty good. So I think they're the team that's really, really hot. in the American League, and they're going to be very, very tough to beat down the stretch here.
Okay, George.
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised too how hot Tampa Bay started, but they were healthy at the time, and I agree with you, Scott. I mean, I've nothing but admiration for manager Kevin Cash, and I really think that you know Eric nailed it though about the injuries and about the lack of depth, and especially in the pitching department. That's going to come back and get you. But don't forget, you look at the season. The season is long, 162 games. So in one's mind, you have to divide it up into like segments. So, okay, you won the first segment, the first 25, 30 games, whatever you want to divide. And now you're struggling. You're struggling this time. There's still time. Okay. We haven't even reached August 1st yet. So the question's going to be, are they going to try to trade for some good help that they need? Tampa Bay, are they going to be looking for another starter? They're looking for some more offense. What are they going to be, buyers or sellers? We know they're not going to be sellers, but will they have enough to give away in equal change to get some big name like Rodriguez from Detroit, the starting pitcher, or a relief pitcher or two? So it'll be interesting to see how far Tampa goes, because their depth in the farm system can't always be there. Okay. I mean, year after year, you're saying that Tampa Bay, I mean, they come out of nowhere and surprise everybody. Well, maybe the surprise is going to be now, because if to stay in this race, they are going to have to add some more depth. And I think it's going to have to be with the trading deadline in mind.
All right, let me point out that 108 Stitches Baseball Talk is being broadcast around the world. The audio version of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk can be heard on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcast. Please hit the red subscribe button on YouTube. South Florida Tribune, we're striving for 1,000 subscribers. Please also comment, like, and share the broadcast. Want to be a guest? No problem. Send topic ideas to southfloridatribune@gmail.com. If you want to advertise cost efficiently, call me 954-304-4941. We broadcast live on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. Our website is www.southfloridatribune.com. On Twitter, you can find us at Tribune South. Candy Ebling is behind the scenes. Coming up later this summer, the Motor City Madmouth show will be debuting on the Eagles Corp Media Studios in Boca Raton, Florida, owned by Dr. Edwin Hernandez, who will, by the way, be my co-host. I'll keep you posted. Eagle Corp is a technology-based company, and Eagle Corp is also helping me market my new book, Adjusting to New Media. With that said, going on over the next several weeks. So I guess there's no better show to have K.R. Lombardi on than a show that consists of Fred McGriff, Scott Rowland being inducted in the Hall of Fame. Everybody knows that Fred McGriff is a Tampa product and for the Bay Area. So you know what? We're going to let you lead off, KR, about Fred McGriff finally getting into Cooperstown.
I went to high school with Freddie's brother. He went to Plant with me, and I haven't seen Fred in I haven't seen Dexter in 53 years. He's never come to any of our reunions. But I remember when Freddie was a little guy running around the neighborhood. He played at West Tampa Little League, and then he went to Jefferson, and he was not real big at the time. And Pop cut him. Pop Cuesta cut him as a sophomore. He came back his junior year, and Frank Permuli, and I think, Scott, you know who Frank is. Frank was coach at Gaither, University of Tampa. Frank was assistant coach at Jefferson at the time. He had gotten fired at Tampa U and I don't even want to get into that because it's so hurtful. But Fred had really problems hitting, and Frank was a left-handed hitting player himself, and he was a great hitting coach. He took Fred in the bullpen in the cage and worked with him on hitting. And Fred couldn't sniff a left-hander. I mean, he could not hit a left-hander to save his life. And Frank showed him how to open his stance a little bit. And then Fred made the team as a junior, did really well. And then as senior year, he just destroyed it. And, of course, the rest is history. He went on and played pro ball. Great family. His mom was a teacher. His dad repaired TVs. Just great. Just the nicest people you ever want to meet in your life. And, what's amazing is Fred was traded so many times. In the old days, when we were kids, he'd have been a first baseman for somebody for 15 years and nobody would have traded him. But in today's market, he got traded 4 times, and then picked up by the Rays at the end. Obviously, I'm so happy for him. I know him a little bit because of his brother, but he's as good a guy as there is. You're never going to meet a nicer person. His son actually played wide receiver at Kansas State. Played a Jesuit baseball and football, and then went on to Kansas State and played football. But I'm so happy for Fred because a nicer guy and a more steady player, great fielder, by the way. I don't know how much you guys remember Fred, but let me tell you something. There wasn't a better defensive fielder fielding first baseman than Fred McGriff.
Well, let me just say this about Fred McGriff. Number one, if there weren't so many work stoppages, he would have had his 500 home runs. So.
Probably, yes. You're right.
I don't think there's any question about it. All right. Go ahead, George.
Yeah, the crime dog. Oh, I love him. Freddie was a good ball player. And a good point, KR, about being traded. But, that's going to happen to a lot of all-stars and Hall of Famers nowadays, especially. But you're right, KR. I mean, I remember the days alkaline, pencil him in, right field, Detroit.
Sure.
Even Normcash at first base for Detroit only played on 2 teams in his career. But Fred McGriff, just a class act, really a great guy. I really liked his speech the other day at Cooperstown. He did a wonderful job, very deserving of the honor, and certainly a man who is just a man of integrity. You can tell. You're not going to find, even though he's got the nickname Crime Dog, you're not going to find a checkered past and all that kind of stuff with Fred. I mean, a good ball player, came to play the game hard every day and was a delight. You had to love his smile too. What he put into the effort on the field was phenomenal. So hats off to him, and I'm glad he's in the Hall of Fame, Scott.
Yeah, when I was covering the Tampa baseball scene, I didn't work with Frank Permulli as much, but I did work with Bob Cuesta. But it's good that Permulli took McGriff under his wing, and as a result, got him straight. All right, Eric.
I mean, it's about time the crime dog got into the Hall of Fame. I mean, had the work stoppages not happened while he was playing, he probably might have had 500 home runs and some change, knowing how hard he hit the ball. I mean, it comes to show you too that this Tampa Bay, if there's any city in America that produces ball players like the fish out in the ocean, it would be Tampa Bay. Because docgooden, Gary Sheffield, you name it, came from there. But I mean, there's no greater person in baseball who deserved it more than him. He unfortunately, though, had some stoppages in his career just because of the strikes and the work stoppages. I mean, that wasn't him. That was just the players and the owners of what would be what has become the millionaires versus the billionaires. But also, him getting in, he finally gets his due, for a great career. He, during his speech, he had every opportunity to take a shot at the writers, which you sometimes will see and do, sometimes jokingly, but often other times you see him pull a Michael Jordan. But overall, he finally got in. He's very deserving of it, and nobody, I think, was nobody was more deserving of him that day than Fred McGriff.
He would never blast the press.
That's just anybody want to comment on Scottrolen getting in as well?
Yeah, I've seen Roland play. Grew up with Roland as the third baseman on the St. Louis Cardinals. Terrific career, and then eventually later on with Toronto. But what bothers me about it is he had the similar trajectory of a career that Don Mattingly had, where his prime was just exciting. The fans were jumping out of their seats, wanting to see him produce and do something big out in the field. But then later on, when injuries caught up to him, he just kind of fell off. So because Roland got in, that kind of sets the precedent of what's Don Mattingly doing out of the Hall of Fame. That's what bothers me about that one. I mean, don't get me wrong. I thought Roland was a good player, but I'm not sure about Hall of Fame worthy, considering Don Mattingly had a similar career to how Scott Rolen had it.
Right, George.
Well, you got to remember, guys, that sometimes it's the rest of the field, let's call it, that's up. And Scott Rolen has been creeping up, okay, year by year by year, the voting list. Okay, so sometimes right place, right time. And this has happened before for the Hall of Fame. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but a guy waits his time, and then he gets to a situation where, okay, so Fred McGriff got more votes, but it was a situation where Roland had the advantage that a lot of guys behind him, were not going to get the 75%. That being said, you got guys that I agree with you, Mattingly. I got Lou Whitaker here in Detroit. I got Kenny Boyer. There's a lot of guys that had similar stats or better stats than Roland as infielders, and they're not in the Hall of Fame. It's just not fair. I mean, it goes against the wisdom of Major League Baseball that some of these guys that deserve to be in there are not in there. And I know they're trying to correct that stuff. I know they're working hard with these committees they have to make up for some of those mistakes. But definitely Scott Rowland was borderline in my eyes too.
What about you, KR?
I thought he was a steady player. I think he's a hell of a third baseman. But yeah, it's one of those things like what George was saying. And I think that it comes down to the popularity of the voters. You got to be kidding. Lou Piniella's got to get in next year. My boy's got to get in next year. I mean, he's just got to get in. I'm a huge Lou Piniella fan, and I guess I'm prejudiced. Friends of the family. My mother and his mother were great friends.
Right.
I think Lou's long overdue getting in. I think, and God may strike me. I think he's a better manager than Tony was, and I'm friends with Tony too. But I think that Lou Piniella was one of the greater managers in baseball. I think his time at Tampa Bay hurt him because Jesus Christ couldn't have won with that club. But I think Lou Piniella is a great manager. I really do. I think he's a great manager.
I agree.
I think he's a great player. It retarded his growth because of his temper. He had a terrible temper.
Oh yeah.
But when you're Spanish, you get to use that as an excuse because I've used it for 72 years. It just happens. But Lou's a great manager, and I think he's got to get in. And I think he's a great player.
You won't get a debate from me out of Lou Piniella. Many years ago, I did interview him when he was at the Yankees, and him and I had a great time together. And I'm sure if I ever saw him again today, knowing that I'm so connected with the Tampa baseball scene, KR, nobody knows it as well as you and George. I mean, I've been hanging around there, and I really enjoy everything about Tampa Bay baseball for sure. All right, let's talk about the present. Eric, who's the surprise team in the American League? We don't need a long, drawn-out answer because we got three more like this. What do you got?
I got to go with the Orioles. I didn't think their starting pitching would be able to hold up, but man, oh man, the Adley Rutschman, Gunnar, and obviously Anthony Santander, man, what a team! That team's really going to make some noise come October if their pitching can hold up, and also that 1-2 punch of Yanier Cano as well as Felix Bautista. I wouldn't want to go in the box and face a 6 foot something down hard thrower who throws downhill than Felix Bautista.
George.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with Baltimore. I mean, they've been steadily getting better the last several seasons and working their way up the AL East ladder. But I've got to go with the O's. The question to me is going to be most of those guys have zero playoff experience, so we'll see when the rubber meets the road come October and they're playing in the playoffs if they can sustain it. So, but they've done a hell of a job, a long time waiting, and there's a huge renovation being talked about for Camden Yards, so they're there to stay. I'm happy for the city of Baltimore and certainly happy for the Orioles. Fans and management for having this great year so far.
What about you, KR?
I'm with you guys. 3 years ago, they were horrible, and they have stepped up. And I think what Eric is saying, their pitching has really they need some relievers, but I think their pitching has really come through. That unknown guys. I mean, just amazing how good they've played. Earl Weaver is flipping his grave. I'm sure he's just being so happy. I never thought that Baltimore could step up like this. And I'll tell you one thing, George, is that they're very cool. They play with. I bet you their clubhouse is really good because it seems that they play together as a club and they pull for each other. And let me tell you something, guys, if you've ever coached, and I have a lot, if your clubhouse is good, that really helps you. And I think their clubhouse is good.
I can easily make this a 4 sweep, but I'm not going to do it. And I'll tell you why. I'm going to talk about the Texas Rangers and manager Bruce Bochy. The Texas Rangers have done a good job. Bruce Bochy has won 3 World Series titles. So Baltimore would be a very popular answer. I'm going to go with the Texas Rangers and Bruce Bochy. There's nothing better than having a manager that's won it 3 times. So, but all of these are good answers. With that said,
Bochy's a Florida boy.
Well, all right, that doesn't hurt either. Then
Yeah, he played at Brevard Community College. Yep.
He played for where?
Brevard Community College.
Oh, Brevard. Okay, very good. Well, he's a heck of a manager. I like the direction the Texas Rangers are going. All right, let's talk about the surprise team in the National League, Eric.
Oh boy, I mean, I have to go with although they haven't really been hot as of late, I got to go with the Milwaukee Brewers. Like after last year, after they foolishly decided to trade Josh Hader in the middle of the NL Central race, despite being in first place, I thought, man, this their playoff window is closed. I mean, they've already started to kind of wreck it in the offseason by bringing up their prospects, but surprisingly, everybody was picking the St. Louis Cardinals to win the Central, and rightfully so at the time because they basically had everyone coming back. But this year, I mean, the Brewers just they're getting by with great pitching, and they're getting some timely hits as of late, especially beating the Reds yesterday night. They're just they're going back to the formula, which is beat them with pitching and get the timely hits, and they've been really surprising this year. I didn't think they had a shot at winning it because they didn't really, aside from William Contreras, they didn't really acquire anybody that you're going to say this team is on the map.
George?
Yeah, it's a good pick there, Eric, but I'm going to go with the Reds. I mean, De La Cruz and what he's done and how Cincinnati has turned their fortunes around this year, I think has been a real positive thing. Obviously, it's great for that city. That city is one of the best baseball cities, always has been for many, many years. And they have seen so much bad baseball. You have to go back a long, long ways to see them having as much fun, the fans in the stadium, as they are now. So I love the excitement of that team, what he's brought to that team. De La Cruz, a rookie, when a rookie catches fire like that, like we saw in Detroit with pitcher Mark Fidrich many, many years ago, back in the late 70s, it's amazing. And Eric, I'm not going to disagree. I mean, Milwaukee has done a wonderful job. I'm not questioning that. And then obviously the 2 teams, and I know I'm not allowed 2 more, but Scott, on the downside, obviously what's happened to the Mets and the Padres after spending all that money, they are right at the top as far as surprises negatively.
Well, I haven't gotten to that yet.
Yeah,
But,
okay.
But that's all right, KR. Give me your thoughts.
I'm with George. The Red, De La Cruz, God, is he fun to watch play.
Oh, my God, yeah.
He can run like a deer. I don't know if there's anybody faster in the big leagues than him.
No.
And I agree with you, George. The Reds used to train in Tampa, and my dad was a Yankee fan first, like I was. But boy, he loved the Reds. He loved the Big Red Machine. He just loved that. And to see them, and let me tell you something. That's a great city for baseball. I've been there twice to watch with the 7th Inning Club in Tampa, and the fans there are absolutely phenomenal. The city's what a great city. If you've never been to Cincinnati, guys, you need to go. What a great city, and to see them play the way they're playing now is amazing. I'm glad to see that because I've never been a big Reds fan. I went to the Tarpon games. I went to the Reds during spring training, but to see them play that well is really good. The team that's amazed me, though, playing at the highest level they play it at, which I think they're the best team in the big leagues, is the Braves. I can't believe the Braves are just running away and hiding. I didn't think they were that good, but I guess they are.
Yeah, you know what? I got to go with the Reds too. Okay, and if anybody knows that area well, I covered the Tampa Tarpons. I loved working Mark Bombard, and Joe Oliver, and the list goes on and on. That was a great thing to watch. The Reds have always had a good farm system, and I'm glad that they're doing extremely well this year. I mean, how do you not root for them? And I've actually watched a couple of their games the last few weeks, few years, I should say, up in Daytona, where they're now the Daytona Tortugas. If anybody's ever hasn't been to Jackie Robinson Ballpark, I encourage you to get up there. It's a heck of a place. So. But I was going to go to Tampa to try to interview Rachel Balkovic, but you know what, KR Lombardia? She declined.
No comment, Scott.
You don't have to comment.
No
She
comment.
declined. Oh, well, what can I say?
She needs to coach softball.
She what?
She needs to coach softball.
Keep her there.
That's what she did, coach softball. And then all of a sudden,
no disrespect to the
political
girl.
correctness is ridiculous.
No disrespect to her. She should. And the only thing I'll say about Rachel Balkovic, okay, is to me, and I can say this because she didn't do herself or the justice by not agreeing to talk to me, because it's a great opportunity to promote women in sports. And if anybody has done it well, it's Kimming in my backyard here in Miami. She's done a really solid job as a general manager. But when Rachel said no, that's okay. I ended up going to Key West, and we all know how that worked out, right, George?
Oh, yeah.
We had a good quality rest there.
Yeah.
All right. So with that said, okay, let's talk about the disappointments in the American League, not counting the Yankees.
Jeez.
Eric?
I got to go with the White Sox. I mean, they got a good. On paper, they've got a good, decent team. They have some decent pitching. They have Luis Robert and Eloy Jimenez when they're healthy, and Yohan Moncada and Tim Anderson. This team should, in a weak American League Central, should be leading that division. It's not in the Central. I feel like you just have to win 82 games and you'll win that division, considering how bad that division is. But apparently Pedro Grifol is making Tony La Russa's second time around in Chicago look like a manager of the year. I mean, the amount of questionable bullpen management, among other things, the amount of problems that club has, especially early in the year where they made unnecessary headlines, because apparently Luis Robert was hurt when it looked like he was dogging it down the line when he could have easily beat it out. But
you want to mute, Eric?
Yep.
There you go.
Yeah, but shouldn't you have known that? Oh my! I mean, if you don't know that, then you ought to find yourself a different job.
Hey, George.
Yeah, I'd agree with Eric. 41-60 is despicable. I expected much more out of the Chicago White Sox than they obviously have shown. And like you said, I mean, the division is up for grabs. I mean, Minnesota and Cleveland. Minnesota has first right now, with Cleveland second, Detroit third. But I'm telling you that Chicago is a huge disappointment. It's really kind of sad in a way, because I mean, they've been trying for years and years to turn that thing around. I know they got the one World's Championship back many years ago, the Sox, but it's a tough sell. It really is. The Cubs are the number one team, loved in that town so dearly, and we have all heard on the news a lot of the bad things, crime happening on the South Side. So the White Sox have a tough struggle, not only on the field, but at the gate as well, trying to retain fans in a very tough section of the city. But I'm not making any excuses for them. They had the chance to run away with this division, and they're not.
Yeah,
I agree with you. When they hired Tony 2 years ago, I think they thought they had a great club coming back, and with Tony to steer the ship, they'd be there, and they're not. And of course, Tony's sick, so that didn't happen. But even before, I thought that they were going to be a lot better when they hired him, because they thought he was going to right the ship. I think the Angels are a little disappointment too. I thought the Angels would play a lot better. You got Ohtani, Trout, you got a pretty good club. So, and they've not done it. But yeah, I agree. White Sox, other than the Yankees, but like you said,
and you know what? I'll take a different road all the way to the Pacific Northwest. with the Seattle Mariners. They're 50 wins, 50 losses. They had a really nice, inspiring playoff run, and it doesn't look like they're in the picture this year. So we'll see how they play out, but I'm going to go with the Seattle Mariners. Final question of the night. Who are the biggest disappointments in the National League, Eric?
The team I love to make fun of the most, the New York Mets. I mean, you decide to shatter a tax named after your owner in the name of trying to contend, and you proceed to do what the Mets annually do, no matter what the year is, no matter who they get, is disappoint. They're like the guy who promised you to get you something really big, and that promise ultimately never goes fulfilled. I mean, that's just the day in the life of the New York Mets. I mean, I have to with the arms that their arms are aging. They should have known that. They also, the bats are, aside from maybe Pete Alonso, they've been disappointing. I mean, you spend all that money and you're trying to avoid last place with the Washington Nationals in the NL East. But I have to go with the team I make fun of the most, which is the Mets.
George?
Well, it's got to be a tie for me, Scott. And I know you want me to pick one, but like I mentioned earlier, San Diego and the Mets, both of them took a similar path, spending a lot of money and selling their fan base that, hey, this is it for us. We're going to win it. This is our year. And then look what happens. And they're both like almost within a game or two of each other in the stand. I mean, as far as the win-loss goes, it's very ironic. It's very sad for their clubs, respectively. And I agree with Eric. I mean, if two ex-Tigers who were great pitchers, Scherzer, Verlander on that Mets team, I thought, oh my God, they might as well just write in the division championship. No way. Hasn't happened. As long with the batting and the pitching, both these teams have gone sour, and it's sad. But you know what? That's what you get sometimes for spending all that money and trying to buy yourself a World Series.
KR?
I don't like the Mets. I despise the Mets, except they got a Tampa guy named Pete Alonso, who's a great kid, and he lives right around the corner from me. And Buck Showalter, who is a Mississippi State guy, and I'm a Mississippi State guy. I'm surprised. I really thought Buck was going to step up and really do a good job there, and they were going to be right there. In fact, but they're beating the Yankees tonight, 7-2. And the second team is San Diego. San Diego, like George said, they spent a lot of money, and they're in third place, I think. My gosh, that's surprising. But yes, either the Mets and San Diego, they're not two teams that I think are very disappointing. I thought the Mets were going to win it easy this year.
Well, the amazing part about it, in the new collective bargaining agreement, then they negotiate another threshold for the luxury tax. They call it the Steve Cohen tax. So
And he ain't care. He's like Steinbrenner. I'll pay whatever I got to pay, but I'm going to win.
Yeah,
that.
He believes in spending money to make money.
Yeah, they went out there and negotiated another luxury tax threshold. He's going to be paying in more ways than one. So, yeah, I guess it's really hard to disagree. Yeah, the Mets could be the easy only choice, but you know what? If Eric, even if you had San Diego and the Mets, I would excuse you, and I guess we could call this a first-class full majority. Well, great time tonight with you guys. It's really been a lot of fun. We talk about the Hall of Fame. We talk about the Rays and the New York Yankees in a place that they're not too accustomed to being. And I remember covering the Fort Lauderdale Yankees many years ago, how much money George Steinbrenner put into that team. And he didn't hesitate to let people know about it. You could question the man about his ability to fire a lot of managers, but nobody will question his ability to go out there and develop a farm system. One thing I want to ask you, KR, how are the Tampa Tarpons affiliate with the Yankees doing as far as attendance and interest out there?
I have a friend of mine that has season tickets. He had season tickets. He got a falling out. I was talking to me the other day. I have not been to a Tarpons game, and I've been saying I want to go, but it's 90 degrees at night. And I just, as I've gotten older, I don't deal with the heat very well.
Right.
But they probably draw, I don't know, a couple hundred. I know somebody goes all the time. It's nice. It's a great ballpark. Mm-hmm. It's a lower A. It's not like the old Tarpons that were the high A where you had some really good players. They're a lower A. So, but I don't know if that matters anymore because Major League, they cut 42 minor league teams a few years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
I think what they've realized is that college baseball is like Double A, and the SEC, the ACC, Big 12, they'll point, the Pac-12, they're like a Double A club. So why would they spend the money when they let the colleges spend that? So that's probably why they've done away with so many minor league teams.
And
I guess.
And the setup now with college teams, and I went to a Division II school where we'd have a couple kids get drafted. They're starting to build. They've kind of put it together like the minor leagues, like all the facilities and stuff, and all the technology we use nowadays. You're basically getting the same experience as you would in the minor leagues, almost, except with a little less money in your pocket.
If you haven't been to college baseball baseball is probably one of the great games I have turned people on to. They go, "Wow, I didn't realize how good it was."
It was great.
And now with ESPN, you can watch it during the week. I mean, I watch every Mississippi State game that's on TV, and which is every home game through ESPN Plus and the FCC channel. And college baseball is tremendous. It's as exciting as football, as college football, which is to me the most exciting sport in the world. But college baseball is right behind it. If you like baseball.
Yeah, go ahead, George.
Yeah, and I don't mean to change the subject here, but Scott, I'd be remiss if we didn't congratulate our friend John Lowe. John Lowe was recognized, former Detroit Free Press Tiger beat reporter for so many seasons, and he saw a lot of bad Detroit Tiger baseball. But John Lowe, a classy act, and he got the Excellence Award from the Baseball Writers Association of America. So hats off to John Lowe, formerly of the Free Press. He also covered the Dodgers and other teams. Well done, my friend.
Yeah, I got to know John Lowe when he was with the Dodgers because I'd go up to Vero Beach, and I was glad when he went over to the Tigers. KR, the one thing we may disagree with a little bit is I think with the Florida State League being the lower Class A, to me it has diminished the interest in my eyes because you're talking about a lower level of maturity at that level.
Yes.
And these guys are, and I've talked to lots of people about it, whether it's Dick Schofield, Lenny Harris, who obviously used to be a former Tampa Tarpon, Willie Blair, and the list goes on and on.
Dick Schofield is still alive?
Yeah, he's actually coaching with the Daytona Tortugas.
Really?
You didn't know that? Yeah,
God,
who was the other one? Yeah, Willie Blair. When I was
still alive. Wow.
Yeah, Dick's a good guy. You remember him.
Sure. Great shortstop.
But I think the Florida State League being a low Class A has diminished it. And they talk about the maturity not being as high at that level versus a high Class A. It has affected the Florida State League. I've covered enough games.
Yeah.
Attendance has never been great with the Florida State League anyways, because obviously, you never know about rainouts and things like that. And, what
when we were kids, we'd go to the Tarpon games a lot. And there would be a couple of hundred. I don't think there'd be more than, I think a great crowd will be 300 or 400 is all. But it's a fun thing to do in the summer for us. Most of my friends would jump the fence to get in the game. My father said, "You're not jumping any fence. Here's a quarter. You're going to pay to get in."
Well, I mean, I had the luxury of covering the Fort Lauderdale Yankees, a product of Georgesteinbrenner. He used to come down and watch these guys play a lot.
At Little Yankee Stadium, right?
Well, yeah, Fort Lauderdale Stadium, Baby Yankees, whatever you want to call them. And I also remember going up to Tampa with Tarpons, and Bill and Kathy Campbell were two of the nicest people you could ever meet up in the press box. So, get recognized a lot. So, but I think the play has diminished a little as the Florida State League is now taking a back seat to a lot of the Class A leagues that are now considered high Class A.
Right. George, you sent Alex Faedo down to AAA to Toledo, huh?
Alex, he's been up and down like a yo-yo this year. But his last outing was very good. He pitched very well last Sunday. But I wanted to make an observation, guys. When you mentioned about the Florida State League, the thing that is sad, though, in a way, is because they're playing in the stadiums that the big league team plays in for spring training.
Yeah.
And these are excellent facilities.
Right.
So, I mean, it's kind of sad when I hear things like that, KR, that, a couple hundred people are showing up here or there. And I agree with you, Scott. These are the lower level, players. But boy, these facilities are excellent that they're playing in because that's what we
Right.
use for spring training.
George,
Oh,
let me
yeah.
tell you what hurts us in Tampa. We have probably the worst newspaper in the United States.
Oh,
They don't even cover the minor leagues. The Tampa
Oh.
Bay Times is probably the worst newspaper. I mean, a little newspaper in the Starkville Daily News covers more than the Tampa Bay Times. It is
Oh.
absolutely, they don't cover. You couldn't tell, people wouldn't know that South Florida has a baseball team unless you knew that. They never cover them. Hillsborough Community College baseball, they don't cover them. They don't cover anything below the Rays, the Lightning. I mean, it's the worst newspaper. It's horrible.
I remember you talked
We don't
about that
read
on a
the
previous
newspaper.
show. Yeah.
Well,
It's
my
horrible.
old paper, the Tampa Tribune, sent me out to cover the
Of course.
minor leagues, and I
Of
loved it. I
course.
told Joe DeSalvo, who was the executive sports
Of
editor at the
course.
time, that I wanted to cover it, and he said, "You can if you want to." And I spent a couple summers writing about
When
it.
I coached in college baseball, they would cover us every week.
KR.
Every week they'd have a story about us. And now you couldn't even tell if there was even a college baseball program in the city of Tampa, and there's two of them. And there's one in St. Pete Community College, Eckerd College, St. Leo up in Dade City, University of Tampa,
Great
who
team.
is one of the top Division II baseball schools in the country. They don't write anything about them. It's horrible. They're horrible.
That's a shame.
I mean, as far as you Tampa goes, yeah, they're one of the best D2 programs in the country. I know them and my alma mater Quincy. They play each other in the beginning of the year.
Yeah, Quincy only, yeah.
Yeah, we obviously Josh Raby, the former, he used to play for the Twins, and obviously Quincy also gets they get a kid or two a year getting drafted by the big leagues.
Sure. Yeah, they don't cover anything.
No, that's a shame.
Well, tonight you got a little taste of Tampa baseball. Then again, when KR Lombardi and I get on the air, we always love to talk about the good times, the good coaches, and obviously one of my all-time favorites is Eddie Cardieri. I like Bob Cuesta, and for anybody that realizes what a hotbed Tampa is, KR and I.
Well,
definitely know
when you're born, they put a baseball in your crib.
Yeah,
that's
true. They hang it like up here.
My grandfather was very, very good friends with Al Lopez. So I became a catcher because my grandfather said, "You're going to be a catcher," and I was a catcher. And then I moved later on, but I was, you're going to be Al Lopez. And
you were a catcher, really?
I was a catcher until my junior year. Then I moved to third base, and then I moved to first base.
Well, you know what?
Scott was a catcher too.
Yeah, I was a catcher
Yes,
in
he
Little League.
was. Yes, he was. Al was a very good family friend. I knew him very well. His house is about 1,000 feet from my house, although it's gone now. They knocked it down.
I played outfield and second base outfield because of Ken Griffey Jr.
Well,
I played catcher because the only position I could play well. I was probably involved with more catcher interferences. I manipulated the umpires and the hitters. Took a lot of extra mound visits. I would be bad for the game of baseball day with all the tricks I tried to pull, and have no regrets and don't mind telling everybody out here.
That's right.
I was fast. That's why they put me there.
What's that?
I was fast. That's why they put me there.
Well, you're fast. You're playing the outfield, brother.
I was a Sigmund Freud behind the plate.
I knew that. It doesn't surprise me.
So with that said, this concludes this edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. But before we get off the air, we'll let everybody know how they get a hold of you. Eric started off.
You can follow me on my Twitter at Sports Team News, or you can find my blog at bellyupsports.com where I write in all things baseball.
Yeah, we got to let KR Lombardi go because he will be able to say this because he's going to be coming on the show a lot more often, and he's also going to be doing some college football for us too, right, KR?
I've been a college football freak forever, and I coach high school football. But I've been a college football freak since I was a little boy. I mean, I watched. We only had 2 games, 1 and 5. 1 was a Southeastern Conference game, and 5 was Southern Cal or UCLA or somebody. But now in the season, I'm in front of the TV from 12 to 12.
Wow.
So you want to let everybody know how they get a hold of you, KR Lombardi?
I'm on Facebook, and I'm on Instagram. I guess that's the only. I don't know why anybody would get a hold of me. I'm not a.
Well, they will when I get through with you.
Okay, but like Eric or I'm.
Hey, listen. KR was telling me the other day when I talked about my book called Adjusting to New Media. Tell them what your thoughts were about the idea.
I think that's great because you have transcended both eras where you had really good newspapers and coverage in radio and the media, and now it's all online, it's all digital, and I think you could probably give us a better outlook of what you went through better than anybody I know that's around, because you're at the right age. You're not too old or you're not too young, so you've crossed both eras of media, and I can't wait to read that book.
Don't worry, I'll get on to you. The one thing I should point out to a lot of you folks that are hearing this for the first time is I do put a lot of big names in there about the people that I've interviewed, a lot in there as well. The people that have come on shows, the ones that I've met, so I do a lot of name dropping and how you can draw from all kinds of people, as well as the background that I have as well. So, it's important that you can draw from anybody, especially those that you're in direct contact. Thanks, KR. And George, lastly, how can everybody get a hold of you?
Okay, you can reach me at gicorn@yahoo.com. You can read me on the South Florida Tribune. I'm under the Motor City Tribune. You'll find a link to purchase my book called Detroit Sports Broadcasters on the Air. Scott is in that book. And yes, this was when Scott and George used to do pencil and paper to interview people. Scott's interviewing Muhammad Ali and Jimmy Connors. And of course, the book is available, like I said, for sale on Amazon as well. So you can find me on this show and Sports Exchange and Pigskin and any other shows that Scott needs me on, or reach me at gicorn@yahoo.com or on Facebook under my name.
And George also did write the forward for my book.
Yes, so, thank you.
Yeah, so you talk about the history.
It was an honor to do so.
KR, just to let you know, George Eichhorn and I go back over 43 years in this business together. So you'll be paired with George when we keep bringing you on 108 Stitches.
George, you must be a Michigan fan too, right?
Well, actually, I support all Michigan schools. I mean, I've been mostly Wolverines, but I got a lot of skin in the game. I got relatives that went to Michigan State, so I actually root for both of them to win.
Sure.
And whereas I am a Michigan Wolverine, but I graduated from University of South Florida Bulls, and they are numero uno.
That's right.
I mean, my brother Lonnie once said, "Boy, you got a lot of hometowns, including Tampa." Yes, you bet, man.
We got to talk about Golish, Scott.
Who?
Some of the things I've heard about Scott Golish. Alex Golish, the coach at South Florida football.
Oh, go ahead. We'll do that.
Yeah.
Don't worry. You'll be coming on more. We'll like to get out, hoping to get out there at some point or another, but we'll bring you on and you can go.
I've heard some really good things about the guy. But
have you really?
Yeah, but it's an uphill battle.
Okay, well, that's why they brought him on. Hopefully he can revive our program. One that I think made a mistake firing Jim Leavitt in the first place. I know they did. I'll never forget the one time I'm over at Raymond James Stadium, and I ran into Leavitt, said, I wanted to talk to you. So why should I talk to you? Because number one, I'm an alumnus, and number two, I'm going to help you promote your program in Metro Detroit. So stand there. I got the tape recorder. We're going to talk. And Leavitt didn't listen to a lot of people, but he listened to me.
He did. Great. He did what they said he did, which is a shame. But yeah, they needed. I don't know, look the other way or just slap him on the wrist. I don't know, but it destroyed the program.
Yeah, once I went out there and we talked, he definitely went ahead, had no problem obliging. So we talked a little bit of history with baseball tonight, and we're talking about the surprise teams and the disappointment. So we'll pick the narrative up another time. But meanwhile, on behalf of Eric Katz, George Eichhorn, and KR Lombardia, who you will see more often in more ways than one, my name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Madmouth. Thank you for joining us on this edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. Good night, everybody, and we will catch you next week.